In birthing Slaanesh from the endless tides of the warp, the Eldari created their own greatest enemy. After its dire awakening, the Chaos God developed a taste for the souls of the Eldar, where before, when one of their race died, they would pass peacefully into the warp in order to be reborn. Now they face eternal torment, for Slaanesh has a perverse and twisted appetite that can never be sated. She who thirsts will not rest until the Dark God has claimed every Eldari's soul. The disgraced survivors of that once glorious race are doomed, and they know it well. In the darkness of space, those who escape destruction upon the Craftworlds cling to what remains of the culture of the fallen Eldari Empire. They consider themselves the true children of Asurion, the Phoenix King of the Eldari pantheon, preserving the art and architecture of their people and passing their ancient history from generation to generation via song, dance, and the recital of myths and parables. It is for this reason that they name themselves the Asuriani. Aboard their continent-sized vessels, these fragments of the Eldar race sailed a sea of stars, always seeking to stay one step ahead of she who thirsts. This is primarily achieved through the use of spirit stones. When an Asuriani dies, their soul is captured in a waystone, a precious psycho-reactive gem worn for such a purpose. The Spirit Stone is then retrieved from the fallen Eldari and released into the Infinite Circuit, the crystalline psychic power grid that runs through the Wraithbone core of every Craftworld. In such a way, the spirits live on, safe from the horrors of the warp and in a twilight existence that allows the Asuriani dead to watch over the living. The Asuriani were not the only Eldari to survive the fall. On far-flung planets teeming with natural life, known as Maiden Worlds, the Exodites have carved themselves a survivalist niche. Savage, primal places where everyday life was far harder than that known by the ancient Eldari. These realms helped the Exodites to remain focused on the aesthetic lifestyle they had chosen, largely living pre-industrial lives unaided by the advanced technology and automation of their forebears. They live in harmony with their adopted worlds, the world spirits of these planets protecting the souls of the Exodite dead in much the same way and using the same technology as the infinity circuits of the Craftworlds. The Exodites will fight aggressively to protect their homes and maintain their isolationist ways, though many are also allied with the Asuriani. Cloistered deep within the hidden city realms of the Webway, particularly the massive dark city of Komorach, those Eldari survivors, protected by the psychic protections embedded ages ago by the Old Ones in the corridors of the labyrinth dimension, conceal themselves in their palaces of depravity, still reveling in the debauched lifestyle that led to their fall. Known as the Drukhari in the Eldari lexicon, they mock and jeer those ravaged by the downfall of their race from the dubious safety of that twilight realm between the material universe and the warp. Even though they would never admit it, they know in their hearts that, try as they might to allay their fate by subsisting on the psychic emanations of pain and terror they seek to produce in other sentient beings, Slaanesh will always claim them in the end. And finally, a small group of Eldari fled deeper into the byways and hidden corridors of the Webway, shielded and guided by one of the few surviving Eldari deities, Kegorak, the laughing god. These Harlequins are welcome in every surviving Eldari community, where their dances, dramas, and martial performances keep the legends and ancient histories of the Eldar race alive, serving the vital function of remembrance for a species that often fears it no longer has a future. The time of ending. As if the unnatural hunger of a voracious and sinister god was not a dire enough threat, the Eldari must also contend with a galaxy that is no longer theirs. In the bloody wake of their fall, the race of humanity has grown to preeminence. The Imperium of man has ascended, conquering much of the galaxy in the name of their god, the Emperor of mankind. The Eldari, whose maturation patterns span nearly a Terran century, cannot compete in numbers with the species whose generations multiply with a frantic pace of vermin. The teeming armies of mankind have brutally swept aside many dangers while stamping their mark upon the stars. In the process, they have awoken many more. The Eldari see in humanity the failings that led to their own downfall, and fear the bitter destiny that they will reap as a result of their Imperium's uncompromising hatred for other intelligent species, hunger for power, and constant wars. Such a rich fodder of dark emotions from the weak-willed humans swells the dark god's power and ripens the galaxy for conquest by the forces of chaos. The Imperium's blind aggression has also contributed to the grave threat posed by another primitive species. Lacking the understanding and foresight of the Eldar, mankind fails to realize they only strengthen the orcs with every battle they engage them in. The green-skinned race has become so prolific that many Asuryani seers believe it has reached critical mass, their numbers too large for even the most protracted cull to have any real effect, and should the orc hordes unite their efforts, all the artifice and cunning of the Eldari would not be enough to stop them drowning the galaxy in blood. In recent millennia, new foes and old have also emerged. Foremost amongst them are the invasion fleets of the Tyranids, having crossed the interstellar void purely to feed. Each craftworld and exodite planet represents a bounty of biomass that the hive mind covets greatly. From the galactic east, the Tau, one of the galaxy's youngest and, in many ways, most ignorant star-faring races, wage an ideological campaign of assimilation and destruction, while on countless tomb worlds the Necrons awake from the great sleep. These most ancient enemies of the Eldari, whose rivalry dates back before the fall, are eager to renew their war against their much diminished rivals. Eclipsing all other threats, the Eldari's most doom-laden prophecies have been fulfilled by the opening of the Great Rift called the Dathodian in the Eldari lexicon. In the wake of this lesion in reality, warp storms have broken across the galaxy, and the slaves of the Dark God spill out in unprecedented numbers. Amidst the madness and slaughter of these apocalyptic days of the period called by the Imperium the era indomitus, a new Eldari deity, Yenid, has been made manifest, and while many have pledged themselves to the god of the dead, others question the methods of the newborn Inari faction, the so-called reborn, who claim him as their patron. Not since the days of the fall have the Eldari been so fragmented and assailed, and for those of their race who yet survive, war remains their only hope. while their many foes lack the technology, wisdom, and skill of the one-time children of the stars, in numbers alone they seem insurmountable. And yet, the Eldari are a proud race, determined that the flame of their people will blaze brightly once more rather than flicker and die out.